Good morning. Microphone check number two. Second microphone check. Mic check 1 2.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to call this meeting of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to order. Today is Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. The time is 9:30 a.m. With us today are Commissioners Emily Lindley and Bobby Janecka, as well as our General Counsel, Mary Smith, and I'm John Neerman. For those of you who are joining us virtually, please keep your microphones.
Unmuted.
Please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. For those making presentations, please wait to begin your presentation until our General Counsel or I have asked you to begin speaking. On items where argument or discussion is allowed, we will inform speakers of their time limits. Registration has now closed, but if you'd like to address the Commission on a particular item, please email agenda@tceq.texas.gov with your name, your affiliation, and the item number that you'd like to speak to, and we will do our best to accommodate that request. Before we get started this morning, I do want to recognize a milestone for the agency. For 35 years, the state of Texas has been ruining weekends for Kelly Cook. For those of you who don't know Kelly, he has led the agency's critical infrastructure division for many years, and during that time has managed the agency's response to disasters, large and small, including, again, just this past weekend. Some of his lawyers call it representative engagements. Kelly's representative engagements include Hurricanes Ike and Harvey, the fertilizer plant explosion in West Texas, the Ebola outbreak, the ITC tank farm fire, severe winter storms, just to name a few. Kelly knows what needs to be done. He knows how to do it, and he gets it done. And whether it's a normal day at the office or he's deployed to another devastating event, he brings the same skill, calm, effectiveness, and reliability. I heard a rumor that Kelly began his career as a lifeguard at the pool at Texas A&M. I think I see some nods. He's owning up to it. He's moved up the career ladder, certainly. Continuing to guard lives, I would note. Currently, his responsibilities include the agency's Homeland Security Program, the Emergency Management Support Team and BioWatch Air Monitoring Program, the Radioactive Materials Compliance and Chemical Reporting Section, the Emission Events Reporting Section, and the Dam Safety Program. So, Kelly, they may not know it, but every Texan is better off for your service. I admire that service. I thank you for that. And I know that that gratitude and admiration is shared by your many friends and colleagues at the agency, probably especially the ones who are spending their weekends with you. So I'm going to allow my fellow commissioners to say a few words, and then I'll ask you to come up and receive a service pin and certificate. Commissioner Lindley.
Well, thanks. That was a wonderful introduction and a round of praise for Kelly. I don't have a whole lot to add to it. You know, I put Kelly in the category of I can't imagine working at the TCEQ and Kelly Cook not being here. He's just always been here and always been so helpful. Even very recently, I can't remember who called me, but a few weeks ago I got a phone call and they said they need to talk to someone at TCEQ, and I said, you need to call Kelly Cook. And then about 5 minutes later, I realized that's not at all who they need to call. But because Kelly's so helpful and so knowledgeable about a number of things, I think they were still able to get help from him. So sorry, Kelly. But I will say also one of my favorite things, and this is just silly, but when we are on those conference calls or daily calls when there's an emergency event happening, I love that at the end it's always cook out. It's just silly, but I love it. So congratulations, Kelly. It's been awesome to work with you and get to know you more over the years, and I'm excited to get to celebrate you a little today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Janecka.
I really appreciate both of y'all's effusive praise of Kelly. I can't hardly improve on it, but I do need to just acknowledge that Kelly was central in my work, in my role when I came into this agency, and I was blown away right there how much of a resource and an asset for the state of Texas he was. Every position and every role we do at TCEQ is a tough one, and it asks a lot of our folks. I think those of us in the agency will quietly admit to the fact that some jobs at our agency are harder than others, and Kelly is a walking example of that in terms of carrying some of the most demanding and most unexpected challenges that our agency's work throws at us and throws at our staff. And that's an area that we shine and that we've been shining for years. I've heard stories of EPA and other states adopting the trailers and the emergency equipment and models and plans and execution that we have been doing well in Texas. And unfortunately, competence tends to bring more problems. And Kelly, you're making all of our jobs a little bit harder by doing it so well. And thank you. Keep it up. I think that it's good that our agency is seen as an example by others, but we need to use those opportunities to also look both ways. And I think I appreciate how much you've been a real open and available asset. Even though you were way up there in the food chain in our agency, it's always been an open door for me, and I appreciate how much that is an asset for our other agency staff. And to all our TCQ folks watching this, please go make friends with Kelly as best you can. I suspect we may not have him for too much longer at our agency with the way we keep loading up problems on him, but I'm really glad we still have you, and hope another 35 years we can maybe
Yeah, I was going to
let's
say,
do
can we
this again.
strike that last part from the record? That there's any potential of him leaving anytime soon?
Yeah, let's start the bidding at 5 years, maybe. Thank you, Commissioner. Kelly, how about if I meet you at the podium here? I'll invite you to say some words if you'd like to, but I'll bring your certificate and pen.
Thank you for all the kind words. I've always considered my time here at TCQ as time with family. Really, from the beginning, I could never imagine working anywhere else, and that's why I've stayed here. I do what I do because I have tremendous support throughout the agency, and it's a pleasure to come to work each day, to work in that environment. I thank you all for, this is a big surprise. I thought I was coming in here to talk about maybe one of the responses and get updates, but this really touches my heart, and I just want to thank everybody. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you again, Kelly. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for being present. And Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to please call the first item.
Item number 1 is the application by USA Waste of Texas Landfills Incorporated for a major amendment to a Type 4 municipal solid waste landfill permit number 2185A. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument but may ask questions.
So for the benefit of those who aren't familiar with our process, Chapter 55 of TCEQ's rules sets out a two-part analysis for considering requests for contested case hearings on municipal solid waste amendment applications. First, we consider whether the requesters have met the procedural and substantive requirements to be entitled to a contested case, and assuming at least one requester meets those requirements, we then consider which issues are appropriate to refer for hearing. So part 1 is about who gets a hearing, and part 2 is about which issues are referred. Requesters who are affected in a manner different from the general public, who make timely comments articulating personal concerns that are relevant and material to the application, and who express those concerns in a timely hearing request, are entitled to a hearing. Governmental entities can have standing if they also identify a statutory authority or other interest relevant to the application. And associations can have standing if, among other factors, they identify a member who would have standing in their own right. And colleagues, on this item, we have about a dozen requests. They're from individuals, businesses, an association, and a governmental entity. For all but one, there is unanimity among the executive director, OPIC and the applicant on which to grant and which to deny. And I also agree on those requesters. So I'll focus my comments on the deniers and, on the denials and on the one outlier. So DA Rambo, Robert Rigdon, and Lester Whiting all raise concerns that are relevant to the application, including issues that I'm going to suggest we refer to SOA, but on different requests. But I share the view of the executive director and OPIC that the applicant, I should say, that they live too far from the facility to be affected in a manner different from the general public. The applicant also suggested denial of the request by Hope Healing and Hooves by questioning its interest in property near the proposed facility. And this is a little bit of a closer call for me, but we have not traditionally applied a high burden of proof on requesters, so I'm comfortable with the executive director and OPIC's conclusion that there's sufficient evidence to determine or show that entity does have an interest that's distinct from and different from the general public. So on that one, I come down in favor of granting the request, along with all the other remaining requesters. So let me pause there, and Commissioner Lindley, see how you came out.
I'm agreement on the parties.
Likewise, well said.
All right. The requesters raise numerous issues within our jurisdiction. I would organize them into 23 separate issues. And for efficiency, what I thought I might do is go ahead and read those into a motion, and we can discuss them on the other side. And then if needed, we can accept a friendly amendment to try to work us to an approvable motion. All right. And I should say that, it's kind of an obvious call on this one, but we're going to allow the full 180 days for the hearing. And I'm also going to recommend that we deny the pending requests for reconsideration. I agree. Okay. All right, colleagues, I move that we grant the hearing request of Dr. Victor Hebert, Gregory Hudson, Myra Wren Jefferson, Damian Lawson, Carverdale Civic Club, Hope Healing and Hooves Incorporated, Revitalize America Partnership Incorporated, Westwind Industries LP, and Harris County. I further move that we deny the remaining requests for hearing and all requests for reconsideration. And I move that we refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues. 1, whether the application and draft permit include adequate measures to prevent soil contamination in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. 2, whether the application and draft permit adequately address wetlands in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. 3, whether the application and draft permit propose adequate measures to prevent nuisance conditions such as dust and odor in accordance with 30 Texas Administrative Code sections 330.7E9, 330.149, and 330.153B. Issue 4, whether the application and draft permit have demonstrated that the proposed landfill expansion will be protective of surface water and groundwater and include adequate provisions for groundwater monitoring. 5, whether the proposed facility will adversely affect the health of the requesters or their families, animal life or vegetation, or the environment. 6, whether the application and draft permit include adequate measures to control on-site populations of disease vectors in accordance with 30 Texas Administrative Code sections 330.3, subsection 175, and 330.151. Issue 7, whether the application is complete and accurate. 8, whether the buffer zones comply with 30 Texas Administrative Code section 330.543B. 9, whether the application and draft permit meet the requirements for an unstable area as set forth in 30 Texas Administrative Code section 330.559. Issue 10, whether the applicant's compliance history warrants denying or altering the terms of the draft permit. Issue 11, whether the applicant has substantially complied with all applicable notice requirements. 12, whether the landfill gas management plan meets applicable TCEQ requirements. 13, whether the landfill expansion is compatible with surrounding land use in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. 14, whether the application and draft permit propose adequate measures to control wind-blown waste in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. 15, whether the applicant provided the required information on traffic and access roads necessary to meet requirements under 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 330.61I. Issue 16, whether the application and draft permit contain adequate measures to control and manage surface water drainage and minimize run-on, run-off, and flooding in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. Issue 17, whether the application and draft permit contain adequate procedures to detect and prevent the disposal of prohibited waste, including hazardous waste, in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. 18, whether the application and draft permit adequately address the detection and prohibition of unauthorized waste in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. Issue 19, whether the application and draft permit adequately address the management of spilled waste materials along access roads and rights-of-way as required by 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 330.145. Issue 20, whether the application contains an adequate subsurface investigation in accordance with applicable TCEQ requirements. 21, whether the application and draft permit adequately address relevant provisions of 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 330, Subchapter H, related to landfill liners. Issue 22, whether the proposed operating hours for the facility are appropriate. And finally, issue 23, whether the application and draft permit provisions for visual screening measures are sufficient for this facility. I further move that we set a hearing duration of 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing until the proposal of decision is issued. And that's the end of my motion, colleagues, and tell me what I missed.
All that sounds good to me. I don't have any comments.
I would second the motion.
Great. No further questions or comments?
No.
All right. Well, in that case, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item number 2 is the application by Holcomb SOR Incorporated for issuance of air quality standard permit for concrete batch plant, registration number 161-637L003. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument, but may ask questions, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
So colleagues, as you know, the legislature has given us a threshold criterion and objective standard for considering these applications on concrete batch plant standard permits. Section 382.058C of the Texas Clean Air Act provides that only those people actually residing within 440 yards of the proposed plant may request a hearing. And of the 7 requesters on this item, the closest lives 580 yards from the plant, so we're compelled to deny those requests. We also received 1 timely request for reconsideration. However, Mr. Travis does not present any new information, and the executive director's response to comments adequately addresses his concerns. So I would also deny his request. Commissioner Lindley?
I'm in agreement, and I can make a motion if.
Likewise.
Okay. Then I would move that we deny all hearing requests and the request for reconsideration, that we issue air quality standard permit for concrete batch plant registration number 161-637L003 to Holcim SOR Incorporated as recommended by the executive director, and adopt the executive director's response to comments.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item number 3 is the application by Steel Dynamics Southwest LLC for amended TPDS permit number WQ00052830000. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument but may ask questions, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
So colleagues, I appreciate that this amendment largely reduces environmental burden. It removes domestic sewage discharge. It reduces the average flow. It incorporates a new constructed wetland as a final step before discharge. And I have to say that I applaud the agreement that led to that new wetland. However, because the amendment does move outfalls and includes a new production line, the application doesn't quite meet our so-called no increase renewal exception to request for contested case hearings. So we're back under our familiar two-part analysis for considering hearing requests. And again, part 1 is about who gets a hearing, and part 2 is about which issues are referred. And we have several individual requesters on this item. Ms. Rawson did not provide the location of her land in relation to the facility, so we have to deny her requests. The remaining requests are a little bit of a closer call in my mind, and Commissioner Lindley, if it's all right, I might defer to you and gather your thoughts first.
My comment was going to be, Bobby, what do you think? So that's how challenging this one is. I do want to hear what y'all think. So I'll say this initially, but I think it's worth discussing. I feel comfortable granting a hearing to the Four Sisters, the joint request. It seems that the outfall is, one of the outfalls, is very, very close to their property. So I got pretty comfortable with that, with granting them a hearing. I'm also pretty comfortable with granting Mr. Schubert a hearing. His is the next property over. Again, closest to that specific outfall. And it was tough for me to tell on a map. It looks like there was some sort of tiny little water body between his property and, the where the actual operations are happening. And I don't know if that's a wetland. I don't know if that's already there or if that's something proposed going to be built to help catch. So I would be comfortable granting him one. Mr. Gingrich is a little harder for me because he is a little further from the outfall I keep referencing. So I'm pretty well torn on him. For some of the reasons you stated, it is decreased flow overall. But he also made some interesting points. I believe his was in his reply. I think that's where he made him, that he claims he does have a water well on the property, and he claims that the water has backed up. And I'm very torn on if that's enough, knowing where his property is in location. So that, I'll stop there. Those are my initial thoughts.
Commissioner Janeka.
I really appreciate hearing a little more detail on your thought process. I'm in agreement on the first two requesters and properties as you described them, and I came down for Mr. Gingrich on the Cinnaminnesota side, given that his family, he and his family reside on their property, and gave pretty specific allegations of water impacts, flooding impacts in terms of the flow of that waterway, the seasonality of it, and then the fact that he did allege, in my mind, very clearly groundwater impacts that are a little different than the other two requesters. It really merited, in my mind, it seems appropriate to move them along. I think there's a lot of interesting. There's a lot of factors that work in different directions in terms of where the impacts really seem to reside, in terms of the amendment not really increasing much if any of any environmental impacts. In fact, reducing more than not. But the complexity, the size of the facility, the level of operations, the life of where it's at in the facility, the number, the discussion around where that facility is going to meet its compliance obligations. I think those are all factors that really, in my mind, a court would probably tend to agree with us. It's appropriate to let him have his say.
Thank you for that. The crux of the issue is whether these requesters have demonstrated effectiveness different from the general public. And one of the things that I had focused on is the fact that their properties are located upstream of the discharge route. But the Four Sisters property, as you said, is close to the outfall, and there's some conversation about historic pooling, and so you could foresee the discharge migrating towards their property. I thought Mr. Gingrich, raised some unique and relevant issues with respect to groundwater. Schubert's request was a little bit borderline for me. So I think I can get where you guys are and suggest referring all three of those requests over.
You know, another option would be an effectiveness determination, possibly for, I don't know, if that's an option, if we wanted to consider that. I would probably consider that for Gingrich, just, again, it's the location, right? It is upstream, and so I very much struggle with reduced flow, their property being a little upstream, but he did make some arguments that, I don't know. I'm more of an effectiveness determination, I'll just say that for him, I
Commissioner
believe.
Janeka?
I'm open to that. I don't know that I had a motion prepared where I'm proposing to break out the issues for an effectiveness determination for the issues unique to Mr. Gingrich, but I propose perhaps we could do that, crafting the motion the same way we did last meeting for a similar effectiveness determination, given that he had some specific groundwater issues that I think fell outside of the other two requesters. I might need a sidebar on that, in other words, but I'm open to it.
Okay, so I think the proposal, and I'm fine with that too, but I think the proposal would be to grant the sisters' request, and grant Mr. Schubert's request, and refer Gingrich for an effectiveness determination? Or,
Yeah, and I definitely want to make sure in the motion that we refer him to ADR.
right?
I just think maybe there's a way that can resolve a lot of the issues, and not have to go through the full SOA process, but that's for them to figure out. I think pausing to make sure I have a motion as well would be helpful.
Okay, well, in terms of the parties, it sounds like we're in agreement. We're granting two of the requests and referring the third, and then denying the Rawson request. How about issues? You want to take a swipe at issues, Commissioner Lindley?
Can I ask Mary one quick question before I do that? I think I know
Sure.
the answer, but I want to confirm.
Mhm.
Thanks. Okay, so the issues I would then propose, let me start with, I'll just start. I've 5 different issues. A lot of them are the pretty standard language of whether draft permits
Unmuted.
protective of water quality, under this water quality standards and designated uses of discharge route, whether it's protective of wildlife and livestock, in the immediate vicinity of the proposed facility in the discharge route, whether it's protective health of the residents in the immediate vicinity, whether it's protective of groundwater in the area, whether the applicant's anti-degradation review is sufficient. And then I'll have to craft it, my motion would be crafted to say if, we're sending Mr. Gingrich for an effectiveness review. If he is granted party status, there's 2 issues he raised that would need to be included. And so those would be whether the applicant's compliance history for the previous 5 years raises issues regarding their ability to comply with the material terms of the permit, or if that would warrant altering the terms of the permit. And then lastly, whether the draft permit contains adequate monitoring and reporting requirements to determine compliance. So hopefully you can follow that
Yeah, the last 2 are contingent on
if he got party
refer to the
status.
extent that it gives
Yes.
him party status, yeah. And you already said that we'd include an ADR referral
Yes, I think,
and allow 180 days for this hearing as well.
yes.
Okay,
And I would, I can't, this might have already been stated as well, but deny the request for reconsideration.
yeah. That works for me. Do we need a minute to pull the motion together?
No, I can attempt
All right. Have at it.
and be corrected if needed. So I would move that we grant the hearing requests of Janet Cumby, Marlene Davis, Miriam Schubert, and Rebecca Hartman and Gary Schubert. We refer the hearing requests of Richard Gingrich Jr. for an effectiveness determination, that we deny all the other hearing requests. That we refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues. One, whether the draft permit is protective of water quality under the applicable surface water quality standards and the designated uses of the discharge route. Two, whether the draft permit is protective of wildlife and livestock in the immediate vicinity of the proposed facility and the discharge route. Three, whether the draft permit is protective of the health and residents in the immediate vicinity of the proposed facility and the immediate discharge route. Four, whether the draft permit is protective of groundwater in the area. Five, whether the application's anti-degradation review was sufficient under the commission's applicable rules and procedures. And that we refer the following additional issues if SOA determines that Mr. Gingrich's hearing request demonstrates effectiveness. Issue 6, whether the applicant's compliance history for the previous 5 years raises issues regarding the applicant's ability to comply with the material terms of the permit that warrant altering the terms of the draft permit. And issue 7, whether the draft permit contains adequate monitoring and reporting requirements to demonstrate compliance with its material terms. That we refer the matter to the Commission's Alternative Dispute Resolution Program to run concurrently with SOA's scheduling process. That we set a hearing duration of 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing until the proposal for decision is issued, and that we deny the request for reconsideration.
I would second that motion.
That works for me. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item 4 is the consideration of a resolution to reinstate and continue indefinitely the Small Business Compliance Advisory Panel. The Executive Director's staff is here to present this item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I'm Shelley Nike with the Program Support and Environmental Assistance Division. With me are Andy Gardner, Deputy Director of the Program Support and Environmental Assistance Division, and Terry Salem with the Environmental Law Division. We are here today to request the reinstatement and indefinite continuation of the Small Business Compliance Advisory Panel, or CAP, as required by Federal Clean Air Act, Section 507, and Texas Water Code, Section 5.135. We also request that the chairman appoint a new member to represent the commission on the CAP. Thank you. We're available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nake. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
The only one that pops into my mind is, Mr. Gardner, who voluntold you to do this?
Be Craig Pritzloff.
To be clear, it's my choice. I have not selected Mr. Gardner yet, but I'll consider you. Ms. Smith, has anybody signed in to speak on this item?
No, no one has signed in.
Mr. Arthur, what does OPIC think?
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Garrett Arthur, TCQ Public Interest Counsel. OPIC supports approval of the resolution as recommended by the ED.
Thank you. I get a little bit of power and it goes to my head. You had me at Federal Clean Air Act and Texas Water Code, so I support the resolution.
As do I.
Commissioner Lindley.
Yes.
I do want to acknowledge this is a unique, perhaps a unique action, given that we're responding thoughtfully to Sunset's direction to take our advisory committees, be responsive to acknowledging the deadline that statute expects us to set on them, and then to revisit and rule. This is one without such a deadline because it's an obligation under federal law. So thank you for taking this on, and please let us know. Very, very well said. And
If you
Chairman,
take it on.
I eagerly wait, seeing who Chairman you select to designate as under the law. This requires your selection, but I'm confident whoever our agencies qualified or wherever the appointment lands, that I know when we get the other nominees' appointments to this entity made. It's one that I'm eager to see the conversation on important topics taking place to the extent that our agency moves slowly but thoughtfully and deliberately on processes. And it's a really important step where the federal obligations expect us to do it. And thank you staff for moving us forward. I'll simply conclude by saying I move that we adopt the resolution reinstating and continuing indefinitely the Small Business Compliance Advisory Panel and requesting a new member to be appointed by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Chairman, as recommended by the Executive Director.
A second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item number 5 is the consideration of material changes to contracts for goods and services awarded under Chapter 2155 of the Texas Government Code, executed between December 1st, 2022 and February 28th, 2023. The Executive Director's staff is here to present this item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, my name is Trenton Davis, Purchaser with the Financial Administration Division. I have with me Roger Doobie, Purchasing Supervisor of the Financial Administration Division, and we are here representing the Executive Director. This item contains the material changes made to contracts and purchases for goods and services between December 1st, 2022 through February 28th, 2023. The reported material changes include extensions of the contract or completion of work for 6 months or more, an increase in consideration of 10% or more. In accordance with Section 2155.088 of the Government Code, the Executive Director presents these items for your consideration. I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
No?
Thanks.
Ms. Smith, has anyone signed in to speak?
No one is signed in.
And Mr. Arthur, what do you think?
OPIC supports approval and issuance of the ED's proposed resolution that acknowledges material changes to contracts for goods and services.
I agree. I've reviewed these items, colleagues, and I'm ready to move forward.
Me too. I will move that we adopt the Executive Director's proposed resolution that acknowledges the material changes to contracts for goods and services in accordance with Texas Government Code Section 2155.088, as described in the TCEQ Interoffice Memorandum to the Commissioners and an interim Executive Director dated May 10th, 2023, in docket number 2023-0344-MIS.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item. Items, plural. We have our enforcement docket.
So the enforcement docket is up next. It's items 6 through 16 and 18 through 21. Item 17 was remanded to the ED on May 5th. The Executive Director's staff is here to present these matters.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, my name is Melissa Cordell of the Enforcement Division, and with me today are Michael Parrish, also of the Enforcement Division, and Gitanjali Yadav of the Litigation Division representing the Executive Director. Pending before you are items 6 through 16 and 18 through 21. The total assessed administrative penalties are $346,450, with $33,233 deferred, $22,812 applied towards supplemental environmental projects, and $290,405 to the general revenue. We respectfully request approval of these items and are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cordell. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
No questions. I just have one quick comment. On item 13, Highway 300 LLC, I want to move forward with adopting what's in front of us today, but I don't want to see them again. I think we need to move them on to the AG's office if there's another violation. That's my 2 cents.
Appreciate the comment.
Well said.
Commissioner- Yeah. Anything else?
Nothing to add.
All right. Ms. Smith, has anybody signed in to speak?
We have people signed in on 7 and 15 who are available for questions, but no one signed in to address the commission.
Thank you. Mr. Arthur?
OPIC supports adoption of these enforcement orders as presented by ED staff.
Colleagues, I do too. I think we may be ready for a motion.
I would like to make one. It
Yeah.
just occurs to me, one second, please. I appreciate. I have a quick question. I'd really like to turn to the individuals who are here for item 7 and was it 15? Was the other item? I wonder if either of those individuals might be here in person or available over the phone. I just had one quick general question. I'd really be interested to take the opportunity, and thank you so much for making yourself available. But if you don't mind, would either of those individuals for item 7? Are they here? Let me see. It was a Scott Baber.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Baber. I just had one quick question. Are you aware of the state's supplemental environmental program, that option available for participants of our agency's agreed order process?
Yes, I am aware of it.
Okay, good. Just wanted to poll and see if that was on your radar. Yeah, I don't have any further questions at this point in time. Thank you. And Mr. Molesky, the Environmental Compliance Manager for Sunoco LLC, for item 15. Mark Molesky, maybe he's fallen off. That's okay. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Baber, for indulging me. And thanks, Chairman. That's all. No questions. And I'd be happy to offer a motion. I move that we adopt items 6 through 16 and 18 through 21 as recommended today by the Executive Director.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 22 is the consideration of a petition for rulemaking filed by the Texas Industry Project to amend 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 117. The Texas Industry Project is the moving party and should present the matter, followed by other interested persons. Currently, no one else is signed in. The ED, and then OPIC. OGC recommends limiting the speakers to 5 minutes each for their presentations. So we would begin with the petitioners, and I believe Ms. Bergeron Purdue is here for them.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Stephanie Bergeron Purdue on behalf of the Texas Industry Project here today to present this petition for rulemaking, and thank you. We wanted to say thank you for consideration of the petition for rulemaking. Thanks for PIC and Executive Director staff also here today. In short, what TIP is seeking with regard to the petition is to align federal Tier 4 engine standards with the agency's Chapter 117 rule provisions. The way the rules are set up today, it requires continuous emission monitorings, or PEMs, for these types of engines. And there's a couple of issues that since 2014, when these engines have been required to manufacture the engines with selective catalytic reduction technology, SCR, which uses a reagent to reduce NOx emissions. In essence, what happens is there are not currently Tier 4 engines manufactured with pre-installed SIMs. And then furthermore, the engines are designed such and manufactured to be tamper resistant, and they're also generally designed to have provisions that will shut down the engine if the feed or if there's another parameter that's not meeting the specified federal requirement. Along with an alert system. So that's the SIMS piece of the Tier 4 engines, the diesel engines that we're seeking to have revised in the rule. The second piece is an ammonia limit for diesel engines. Today, the rule, it defaults to a 3% oxygen requirement with a 10% ppm limit. And what TIP seeks is to align these diesel engines with units that have a similar operational capability having to do with higher excess air, and those would be gas turbines and gas-fired engines. So the request there is to include call-out diesel engines to be set at that 15% oxygen requirement. And then furthermore, similar to the SIMS rationale for monitoring over and the 117, I believe, 310, 410 provisions relating to Houston and Dallas, that for the same rationale that the monitoring also be revised so that there's not a continuous monitoring requirement for the ammonia limit. So keeping it pretty basic and giving y'all time back. Available
Great.
for any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bergeron Purdue. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
I have no questions other than observe that what you might think is pretty basic would differ wildly from what the typical Texan lay public might think is pretty basic, but I appreciate the quick overview
It's
of it.
not without some effort to make it conversational. So,
And we appreciate the time back. Yeah. Thank you. All right, Ms. Smith, you said no one has signed in to speak, correct?
That's correct.
All right, let's hear next from the Executive Director's Office.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I'm Lindley Anderson with the Air Quality Division. With me today is Amy Browning with the General Law Division. Staff has reviewed the petitioner's request and recommends approval of the petition. We're available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
Look forward to seeing the public's reaction.
Mr. Arthur, what does the Office of Public Interest Counsel think?
With the understanding that the requested exemptions should not adversely impact the state's progress in attaining the 8-hour ozone NAAQS, OPIC recommends the Commission initiate rulemaking proceedings as allowed by 30 TAC Section 20.15D.
Thank you. Colleagues, I agree with that. The petition appears to have merit, and I think we should go ahead and put it out, begin a rulemaking process to evaluate that.
I agree, and I can make a motion. I move that we direct the Executive Director to initiate rulemaking to examine the issues raised in the petition for rulemaking filed by the Texas Industry Project concerning amendments to 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 117.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
That takes us to items 23 and 24, which are two quadrennial rule reviews for 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapters 91 and 337. I'm going to give everyone a chance to move up. I'm not sure. The Executive Director's staff is here to present these matters.
Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I am Gwen Rico with the General Law Division, and with me today is Abigail Adkins from the Environmental Law Division. Pending before you are items 23 and 24, the adopted rule reviews of 30 TAC, Chapter 91 and 337. As required by Texas Government Code Sections 2001.039, Executive Director's staff conducted rule reviews of these chapters to determine if the need for the rules within these chapters continue to exist. The proposed notices of the reviews for 30 TAC Chapters 91 and 337 published in the January 6, 2023 issue of the Texas Register with a 30-day comment period for all chapter reviews. No comments were received during the public comment period for these reviews. Based on the reviews of these chapters, the executive director has determined that the reason for the rules in chapters 91 and 337 continue to exist. In conclusion, we respectfully recommend approval of the adoption of the rule reviews of 30 TAC chapters 91 and 337. Additionally, staff requests authorization to make non-substantive revisions necessary to comply with the Texas Register requirements. Thank you. The project managers and attorneys assigned to each chapter are here with us to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Smith, has anybody signed in to speak?
No one has signed in.
Mr. Arthur?
OPIC agrees that the reasons for initially adopting the Chapter 91 and Chapter 337 rules continue to exist, and we support the readoption of these rules.
I agree. Period.
Likewise.
Same.
I'm just going to name the chapters so that we're voicing it in close proximity to reauthorizing this rule, but I agree that the alternative public notice and public participation requirements for specific designated facilities and the dry cleaner environmental response rules in our sections rules are both worthwhile. Thank you, staff, again. I move that we adopt the rule reviews and readopt the rules in 30 Texas Administrative Code, chapters 93 and 337 without amendment.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item number 25 is our public comment session. We don't have anyone signed in to speak on this item currently. We can pause here and allow anyone to stand up if they're here to address the commission. We can also ask to have the line unmuted for a few seconds.
Any public comments? All right, hearing none. Ms. Smith, please call the next items.
Well, that takes us out of the items for open session and into the items for closed session, which are items 26 through 29. The commission will meet in closed session in room 211S in Building E at, should we say 1025? 1025 as permitted by the Open Meetings Act, including Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and 074, to take up and consider matters pursuant to item numbers 26 through 29 as posted and noticed.
The time is 10:22 a.m. We are in recess.
Muted.
Okay.
Unmuted.
Yeah, it's
Muted.
unusual.
Unmuted.
Time is 10:45 and we're back in session after meeting in executive session. Did we get that, or should I repeat it? We got it? Okay. So we're good. Apparently, there's a little bit of remaining business and a motion to clean up, and Ms. Smith, I'll have you assist us with that.
So first, we'll close out items 26 through 29. The commission met in Building E, Room 211S for closed session from 10:25 to 10:24. On item numbers 20.
We're having problems with numbers. Let's
10.
take that from the top.
Yeah, to 10:44 probably.
Yes, thank you. Definitely
Takes a
having a
village.
problem.
Takes a village.
Yes, 10:25 until 10:44 on item numbers 26 through 29 as posted and noticed pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, and no action was taken. And so now we will go back and reopen items 23 and 24 to clarify a motion.
And just for reference, these were the quadrennial review rulemakings, rules that were still needed under chapters to be specified, and we were going to attempt to adopt them readopt them without amendment.
I make the motion that we adopt the rule reviews and readopt the rules in 30 Texas Administrative Code Chapters 91 and 337 without amendment.
A second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
And I believe I just said a number wrong the first time for the really skeptical members of the public who are certain that something very bad just happened. Just clarifying, dotting our i's.
Thanks. I think that brings us to the end of all of our items. We can adjourn the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. With that, the time is 10:47 and we are adjourned.